That's Bertha. And we're back to recording Natural Law the 7th. I know because tomorrow's my brother's birthday. Happy birthday, Chris. January 8th. And it's also Elvis's birthday tomorrow. Really made a point of that. Yeah, my brother's born the same day as Elvis. So made a point about laughing about that. So January 7th, and we're in the middle of winter. And, you know, what are people doing right now? Well, New Year's resolutions. Should ate too much over the holidays. Well, ate too much during the whole COVID experience. So that's 2 years of weight gain, laziness. And so if you're watching this recording, you have to understand that, and this is the first time you're watching this, please understand that this is like a rated X health channel here. Because I'm not saying what's politically acceptable. And tonight I'm going to jump into something, why I do cleansing and why seasonal eating. So I guess I better show the audience. Why do I practice seasonal eating, which I've been doing for 30 years? We'll talk about that in depth. We're going to do a winter cleanse because generally people feel better when they cleanse out all their debauchery over the holidays, myself included. And this is the seasonal living aspects that if you're in Chinese medicine, that's what most of this is based on, is that's this 5-element thing. So first of all, there was a cleanse supposed to start next Friday, but due to infrastructure and website development, we pushed it back to the 21st, and it makes it easier for me to put a little thing together and get it out to people ahead of time. I have a lot of sale herbs, like cases of it in my office that could be really good cleanse worthy for people, and cheap too. So there's a 3-week cleanse that we generally do, and how many of us this year kind of went off the beam on eating during the holidays or drinking any of the above? I really didn't. Anybody? Oh, they're all really good. Too depressed. Yeah, but some people eat. I used to eat when I was depressed. I would just eat and eat, you know, to stuff the depression down. So in years past, some of my funniest memories of like being 7 years old at a family, grandparents, my mom and her sisters, and like 7 grandkids, and aunts and uncles, and everyone's drunk or the kids are on some kind of caffeine and sugar thing. And I remember everybody knocked something over this night, and it was like everyone was drunk, and that was the memory of being drunk. And you know, like, wow, it was sweet in a way, but at the same time, like now like knowing what alcohol does and having seen the long-term effects of alcohol with people versus more you know, let's say plant-based medicines. It's shocking to see, like, and knowing, you know, why we were not encouraged to, like, during the the previous recommendations of how to be healthy. Did you see seasonal cleansing anywhere? Did you see voluntary cleansing? Did you see, you know, when they say D3, they're actually saying sunlight. I think there's 27 isomers of D in sunlight. And when they say zinc, they're actually saying zinc and copper and get it from frickin' liver. And when they're saying ascorbic acid, they're actually saying get raw plant juices, which is the highest source of vitamin C you can get fresh out of the plant. I mean, that's what I spent my life studying. When you say this formula of herbs for cancer, well, that's what I did. Is I pick apart the formula and go, well, why is this herb in there? Why is this? What's the rationale? The standard process formulas, there's 300 of them. Why is there vitamin E have pea vine juice in it and cow testicle extract? I got this young man, he buys their Cataplex E, which is one of their versions of vitamin E. And the first ingredient is bovine orchic cytoplasm extract, meaning testicle. And he just loves the idea. He's like 35, he's like, yeah, testosterone from the cow testicle juice, you know. But how is that connected to vitamin E? It's not a vitamin E product. It doesn't have vitamin E in it per se. So why is that in the formula, for example? There's an action there. And if you're watching this, that's what we're teaching, is the actions of life. Steiner talked about it, the process of alchemy. We're always becoming something new. And we know we don't live in a still chemical universe. As a matter of fact, my contention is that our cells don't read chemistry. Our cells read frequency and energy. And we've been brainwashed. Chemistry is a secondary byproduct of something that's already happened. And they photographed it at a still moment in time, and it's dead. And that's why I love the Chinese medicine. When I found out about Chinese medicine, macrobiotics, and these old Indian systems and the Greek systems, I went nuts because I was like, this is it. This is how we understand how to live. We've been studying cadavers and dead chemical formulas. And what did the Bible say about this? Thou shalt not worship false idols. Those are the frickin' false idols, folks. The guy that James pointed out in a Facebook post, the 2046 guy, the Diehold Foundation, is that the Diehold?
Oh, the Diehold guy, yeah.
He had, he has some great contentions that they've changed the science thousands of years ago back to a matter-related orientation to society, to science. There's an Aristotle one that he has on his YouTube playlist, James. And his contention is that they changed the very nature of science thousands of years ago. Go ahead.
Well, that's exactly why the Bible was written to describe these exact times. Because they're cyclic events,
right,
that you can track with the geologic record. Anybody can.
Right. And we're being brainwashed out of that.
Science and not the Church of Science.
So I'm here. James understands what we're trying to lead people back to is this frequency warfare. Like people are getting sick because we're getting turned up. The radio frequency emissions are being turned up on a lot of levels and we're being cooked. The bleeding stuff you see. I mean, a lot of people I know are sick right now. And a lot of people are waking up between 3 a.m. and 7 a.m. all around the country. So I got a lot of sample sizes to go check on. They're just, are the satellites hooked up? I heard some Starlink thing going on up there, James, or they delayed it? That's what they're telling us. That's what they're telling us, right? Yeah, so there are signs, and so I'm telling people, like, one of the most important things you can do right now that we're told not to do is have lots of saturated fat, cholesterol, protein, and fresh vitamin C bioflavonoids. That's your radiation insurance right there. You're being told to eat meatless burgers, low-fat diets, drink alcohol, doesn't matter. What was an essential business during CoBlab? Alcohol. Essential business. Two scientific studies I have seen, psychology studies on cannabis use, is that those who use cannabis, and two separate studies, are less able to be brainwashed than those who don't use cannabis. Now, isn't that interesting? Isn't that interesting? But was the American population put in front of a television set with fluoride in their brain from the water? And what does fluoride make you? Susceptible to suggestion. It's well known in psychiatry. And you got all the people in front of the idiot box. Like I watch sports, so the basketball is just killing me because the Omicron, and the teams are losing their players because of the Omicron variant. Or they're canceling all the games, and the big variant. And I mean, people aren't really even sick. They're just testing positive, right? It's such a game. And well, I believe what's happening is that it's so ridiculous it's being exposed. I mean, even you're really seeing how asleep you are at this point. And so don't want to digress too far down that because we got something else to go to. Yeah, so what we're here to teach is back to process, and these little eddies like we just got in there, that's part of what the people in control want. They want us in the eddies, divided, distracted, tempted, low, powerless, shamed. Shall I go on? And those are the lower emotions, and that's what we're here to teach is like a natural law. I mean, some of the testimonials on the people in the class, like, Katie, it's like, I remember when I really, the first time I felt uplifted was when I met my first yoga teacher after I broke my neck 35 years ago, Sonia Glassmeyer. There were 64 women and me in this yoga class. I was so overwhelmed, to say the least. And this beautiful goddess is up there. I was an angry 6 years into waking up, punk rocker, shaved head, fresh out of a broken neck. And she's up there saying, "Oh, life is so good. And can you hear the rain?" And there was rain falling because it was like a January class. And you hear the raindrops falling. And there's voices in my head going, "She's fake. How could anybody be that happy? She's got something up her sleeve." So I watched like a hawk for a few weeks. And then she finally got my trust because she didn't break under pressure. I'm a pretty good poker myself. And so that was the first time I really, after about a month, it was like, wow, I really relaxed. And like, wow, this person's really got it together. And she's not fake. And I met a few people like that in my life. And I realized these were the pay it forward people that sometimes you have to fake it till you make it. And I did a lot of that. Like, what was that one Tibetan when I was 25? I started it for 5 years. It was so mechanical. May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be happy. Repeat to infinity. In traffic, when I'm angry. It doesn't go very far, right? It's pretty mechanical. But then there was a point where I was about 35 years later and I was driving and the mantra popped in with no effort. Like it just popped in spontaneously. And I asked one of my mentors / teachers at the time, and he was like, that's a good sign. When the mantra pops in a moment of need, it means the grace is starting to root into your life more. It's already there anyways. I mean, we think we're looking for something, but you can't escape what's always and already here spiritually. And so, sort of like the elephant in the room that no one really, it's just so simple. But the ego likes games and, so cleansing, the point of it is in seasonal living, like what do we do? Because cleansing applies to this too. So adaptation. So seasonally, if you break the process of life down to 4 basic elements, which our ancestors used very simply, is earth, air, water, and fire. So fire is the sun, or fire you make. Water is the rain, right? Or moisture in the air. The air is the wind, or the air we breathe. And then the earth, which is the soil and the rocks. And so there's variations on earth. Like in Chinese medicine, they have the metal element, which to me is a more contracted form of earth, right? Versus mud or sandstones, less dense. And we can ready whip. So we can feel that. I am on a journey with my, the corny word chakras. The base chakra is a very dense energy of earth, and the very top chakra is a very undense energy of consciousness. And light, sound, air, fire, water, earth. So if you meditate on that in yourself, as I have pretty much daily for 30 years, and there's a sense of what are the elements doing in me today? I did it last week. You weren't here, Monica, but I did a little leg exercise. And why does Craig do yoga every day? Because it allows me in the morning to see how much risk I can take during the day. I'm shaky and off and distracted. Probably don't want to take a lot of risks at 56. So for me, it's sort of life insurance is the practice because it tells me how I'm doing. I'm being instructed to do back to the morning and the evening practice because the times are so dark at times. It's like you got to get back to your refuge. And the wintertime is the time where we find refuge. If we don't get the restore time, then we start drawing on our bank account, which, what's that in Chinese medicine? That's sort of for running on our bank account. That's Shen? Shen? Jing? There's these distinctions in alchemy that a guy made that Jing and Shen are like spirit and soul, and he had these distinctions, and I can't get it. Like I'll find it at some point. We'll talk about it next week. But so you start drawing on what's called your bank account, and that's where you see the dark under the eyes. And then I have documents about the 3 stages of degeneration, and there's signs that I've been trained to look for, and you too, some of us, where you get bags under the eyes and dark around in here, and then the tongue starts getting cracks in it, and you start seeing symptoms appearing daily and pain. And it's like, well, you're in stage 3. You've dug a pretty deep hole for yourself. Right? So you better start getting some ropes thrown to you to climb your way out. So seasonal eating allows us to see things before they become purebred illnesses, what I call early warning signals. Like my tongue's a little swollen right now, and I don't know, what did I have earlier? So it's a sign. Oh yeah, I had 2 almond sugar cookies with some black tea. So that means my tongue's swollen. It means inflammation. What does sugar cause? Inflammation. So it's like early warning signal. Next meal, have protein and vegetables. Or like right now, for example, I'm using some heavy CBD to sleep through this EMF period. When it's supposed to rain and you see rain in the Doppler radar and it's not raining, that means their frequency, they're modulating the air and they're not letting it rain. And that means we're awake. And I can correlate it now because I call people in the morning, hey, what happened to you last night? It was supposed to rain. It didn't rain. And Pacific Redwood numeral 1 on YouTube, he'll Russ will post stuff too, which he calls the weather controllers. He's quite good. He validates some of my intuitions because I'll just intuit something, go look, and he's like, oh, up here on the satellite, it'll show the triangle where it should be a vortex, you know. I'm working on a document called Weather Phenomena. I'm going to keep it generic in my Google Drive. And what it's going to be is I have images of high pressures and low pressures and the vectors of force of what weather should look like versus what it is looking like now. And eventually it'll be an education document about, go on this website called savethepuffyclouds.com. It's been one of my dreams to get that website going. And my friend Mark wants to contribute where people all over the world could just send, like, here's normal clouds and here's the 10 or 15 fucked up new clouds that are coming out of airplanes. And they're calling them clouds. In science manuals, no less. You know, it's like, so the kids these days, 15, 20-year-olds, they think these are real clouds.
26.
26 new clouds in the last how long?
Read that within the past couple months.
In the last 40 years or 20, 30, 40 years? I would think since the 70s, I bet, because Kennedy gave a speech about geoengineering in 63, I think. It's on YouTube still. And so if he was consciously talking about using geoengineering to help people in 63, what does that tell you? They were using it to not help people. And they were spraying silver iodide in Vietnam on the clouds to cause the flood and the rains, and it backfired on them and fucked our troops. They're not going to tell you that in history books. The big problem. They thought, oh, we'll outsmart the Viet Cong. We'll just cause rain with our smart guy weather devices that we don't know what the hell we're doing, but we'll try anyways. And oh, fuck, our troops are getting heavy losses because they're used to the monsoons where it was their home base. Our troops weren't familiar with monsoon conditions, but they were. Oh, yes. So winter is about water, right? And so one of the reasons back here is, see, moisture factor. In the wintertime, you have a lower temperature, you have more moisture, more decay, less light, more air movement, and animal plant behavior generally is less, right? So by doing seasonal living, you can actually feel each of these, can't you? You can feel what it's like to walk, like right now, even on the misty mornings, the birds are out there because it's a source of life out there. And there's just like birds I've never seen before. Once I'm somewhere for a year, the plants attract the insects and the insects attract the birds and the birds attract the other weirdness that they attract. And then, you know, there's dragonflies, and it's satisfying to watch life return to where you are, which is what we're going to film. The guy in Africa I'm working with, we're going to film the move out of here, which we don't even know where we're going yet, and make it into a little movie of how do you start a permaculture home from scratch. So that's what we did here. If we had more of a knowledge and more of a group effort, then we could have turned this into, like, you know, more composting and human manure toilets, and, you know, because that's really the key, is to get your waste recycled back into your own house and soil. That's a lot of nitrogen, and that's part of the natural cycle of nitrogen in the earth. Like I was telling Isabel, there's a natural iodine cycle I never really thought about, but because iodine always wants to evaporate. She asked, on your salt over there, is there any iodine in it? And I go, there was in the rock form, but once you granulate it, the residual heat causes the iodine to evaporate. It's a very unstable element. Quick story too, I bought an elemental iodine, and I got it through eBay years ago. I don't know if you can still do it, because Lugol's solution is 1/3 elemental iodine and 2/3 potassium iodide. And elemental iodine is very hard to get. You can't get it anymore. So there's some black market dude getting it on eBay. I don't know how. I just typed in elemental iodine. Oh, I'll sell it to you. And it came in a car steering wheel bag with 7 layers of plastic with these little iodine orange pearls. In the course of a week, it took from get from Romania to here, the iodine had evaporated through 7 layers of plastic, from clear plastic to orange, in the course of a week. So that's how unstable of an element iodine is. Even packed around all that plastic, it's still gassed through the plastic in the course of a week. It's a powerful element. You know, you get it in your bloodstream, and it's a killer. You know, it's a really important element to have enough of right now, because it's part of my de-nanobugger protocol. That and boron and silica. I just boiled up a pound of horsetail and oat straw and condensed it down. That's another product I'll be using. So you mix the borons, the borax with that, with some iodine, and you got a pretty potent drink. One of my clients calls it mineral yuck. I have this ocean liquid magnesium, and you mix it with some calcium and some sodium and potassium, which is going to be in all that. And then you throw in the boron, iodine, and silica. You've got I used to, when I was a punk rocker, there was this poison called Mr. Yuck. And Mr. Yuck was a really Indiana poison thing. You can look it up, James. We used to put Mr. Yuck stickers on everything because everything was yucky because we were punk rockers. And so she called it mineral yuck. Oh, I want some more of your mineral yuck because it tastes so awful. But it works. So this is the time of year where we want to be mineralizing. This time we have a lot of bone broth, right? We want to build up our bones. So eating fresh fruit from your area is giving you the frequency of your area. Eating a pear in Oregon isn't giving you the pear grown here. What would Steiner say about this, you think?
I haven't really read too much on nutrition, but he says we need to completely break the food down.
You talk about local versus non-local food, though. Probably wasn't a consideration for him.
Well, he did one lecture. I remember twice that when it is out of sorts and it wants to carrot, that he would have the carrot because it's a root vegetable and root,
Right.
and that is very helpful for the brain.
I had these macrobiotic teachers in the early to mid 90s, and they were really, that's one of the points they just hammered home was this elemental thing. And Michael Tierra, my herb teacher, said, you can buy Schisandra berry grown in China and made into an herb formula, and quote, you can have your local Schisandra berry and it's going to be 1,000 times more effective, end quote.
That's a good observation. I don't know what Steiner would say specifically.
But if you think about it, it makes sense. That it makes like the truth sort of self-evident. If you're growing something in your local environment, like stuff in my backyard, and I do these smoothies with my greens from the backyard in it, there's a 20-fold increase in energy in my being. And it's because that's the natural source of vitamin C that's coming out of the elements, because the plants are the ultimate alchemists. They're taking water and minerals and light and air, and they're making something out of it, out of the base elements. So nature's literally taking chaos and organizing it. And in alchemy, that's called the first matter is the primal soup of creation. I call that the pregnant void, but in consciousness, we have to go through the dark night of the soul or the void to get to the pregnant void. That's my direct experience. And the dark night of the soul ain't so fun, yeah?
My observations are Dr. Tom Cowan talks more about Steiner than anybody else I can think of. He might be someone to ask.
Oh, that's actually
And he was showing a recent greenhouse of his and his water purification. Cowan would have that answer.
good idea. Good idea. Yeah, Tom.
What exactly was your question about what Steiner was?
Well, just not local versus non-local foods. When you buy, like my teachers were all clear about, you're going to get way more effect eating something grown locally versus buying the same thing from 1,000 miles away. Because your local sunlight, your local water, your local air is what helps you adapt to your local environment. Precisely.
I've read some stuff on like by Steiner, but I've lately read some more stuff about like etheric and astral bodies, and it sounds like what you're saying is related to that, because as long as our etheric bodies are in our working through our circulation in our body to kind of like create fill in the deficiencies that we have, I guess, we aren't going to have these free forces of metabolism that go back into the cerebrospinal fluid, which is actually what gives us our higher consciousness through something called pneumatology, like the study of the breath.
Okay.
And then we don't have these free forces of metabolism they're kind of like stuck in the body, and I see that as like they're there to address deficiencies, like nutrient deficient when we're not eating with our environment. We'll be more stuck in that like body thinking rather than the higher consciousness cerebrospinal fluid thinking.
See, that's well put. So some of the people on video won't hear it, so I'll sort of summarize that. Is that there's a woman who wrote a book called The Biology of Kundalini. There's a webpage called biologyofkundalini.com. Her name is Jana, J-A-N-A, Dixon, D-I-X-O-N. And in that, she has a 200-page book where she outlines some of the things that Thomas is saying. In that, one of our topics last fall was related to this, Tom. We were talking about, there's a bunch of European doctors at 100th Monkey, the same time I did, this idea that the bugs in our gut tether our soul to this body. And their desires, we think, are our desires, but this thing has to evolve for us to get out into the cerebrospinal fluid, right? And we get tethered. So every time we act on those temptations, we're sort of selling ourselves out to reincarnate yet again in another moment, and another moment, and another moment, being tethered to this vehicle. I call it an earth suit. One of my military friends calls it his meat bag. And I said, my earth suit feels insulted at your statement, because this is an earth suit, not a meat bag. The earth suit for my soul. And so it's our interface. And so if we understand the process of alchemy, then to simplify it, there's the air element, and that's consciousness. And then there's the blood, the sangre, which is the mediator down to the body, which the alchemists call the salt, or the earth element. And so the blood's part of the water element, and that's kind of the topic of today. So, James knows some things that I know, and there's another one that you may not have tapped into yet, and Isabel and I are working on it. So why was I attracted to the root cause protocol 5-6 years ago from an ex-girlfriend? I didn't know, but she was interested, and she was sort of my pointing me in a direction kind of lady. And so I went and looked into it, and it's like, well, there's an iron conspiracy. All the recommendations are fucking with our iron metabolism. All of them, the D3s, the ascorbic acids, the hydrochloroquines, the zinc, they're all fucking with iron metabolism because they dysregulate copper and magnesium metabolism. And so after 5 or 6 years of studying this, Isabel sends me this document about Steiner, right? It was a thing about iron from Steiner. So iron is an affinity to the blood, which is the mediator of consciousness and matter. Thomas Meyer. So the contention I'm making is iron is magnetic. And ferritin is like an iron cage. It's where iron is stored in our body. And as we store more iron when it's dysregulated improperly at the mitochondrial level, then we develop these cages of iron in our body. You see people that are magnetized now? I believe it's because they've already got high iron levels that are stored in their body, higher than, like 1,000 times higher than it should be. Then you jab them with graphene and this other stuff. And so I believe the central conspiracy is in the mitochondrial level. Because even the alternative people that Morley's been poking at, and I'm poking at now, is that if you want to do zinc, fine, but do it with copper. If you want to do vitamin C, do whole vitamin C out of the earth. If you need D3, go get sunlight and cod liver oil. Don't take D3. It's a freaking over-the-counter hormone. And he's got the evidence over 20 years of looking at this to prove it. I got PowerPoints this long now, it's like, wow. And he's got the science because he's a science-based guy. There's irrefutable points in these PowerPoints that you cannot go against nature. You start taking these man-made, ego-made molecules, D3, well, use it like you should use it as a drug, with caution and suspicion. I use it with clients, but I give them cod liver oil too. I just sent off a guy in order in Alaska. He's been in the darkness of winter. Take the whole food stuff with it, So, that little rant there. Let's see. That was part of the light. And so we're looking at this iron thing, and iron is in this water element. It's in our blood, but it's attached to hemoglobin. So when you see your hemoglobin in your lab work, what that's really saying is your iron levels in your blood that are circulating on the red blood cell. Now, how many of you thought about your hemoglobin A1C? What's that? It's a blood sugar marker, they say. What's hemoglobin A1C? You see in your blood work, they do it all the time now. It's your long-term blood sugar average, they say.
Long-term blood sugar.
Average over a 90-day period.
Iron.
For blood sugar,
blood
for
sugar.
glucose. I'm tying something to iron in a second here. It's oxidation of the blood, because sugar causes oxidation of the blood too, and so does iron. Like rusting. Okay, so everything about, so you have a hemoglobin as part of your complete blood count. Then over in blood sugar, there's hemoglobin A1 small numeral C. What does that mean? What's the A1C mean? What's different than, what's that makes that different than hemoglobin? And how the heck is a hemoglobin related to blood sugar? What the fuck? I mean, these are the kind of stuff that I muse over going, how is iron connected to sugar? What the fuck? And no one's talking about it. Doesn't it piss you off? Like, it just pisses me off. Like, these are things that oxidize us and cause us to rust and age faster, and no one's talking about it. Except freaks like me. Thank God for me. So hemoglobin A1C. The A1C means glycated hemoglobin. How much sugar is attached to your hemoglobin? They're not telling you that, and they're giving you the lab, are they? Well, hemoglobin A1C is 5.2%. You're good. Off you go. Wouldn't it be nice if your doctor actually told you something like that?
Don't hold your breath.
Right? Yeah, but Rockefeller trained doctors aren't going to do that. That's right. Or be de-licensed. Oh, shout out to Lynn August, MD, that Michael McAvoy works with. She was doing cancer therapy up in Canada, and they took her license away, and she said, F you, and went underground and is still practicing. Thank you, Lynn August. Just did cash only. You know, and she just said, no, I'm not going to stop practicing. F you. These are the heroes we need. Right? I'm not going to start practicing. Even at risk of Rene Cassier, the ESSIAC formula. ESSIAC is Rene Cassier's name backwards. Famous cancer therapist in Canada, burned her clinic to the ground. Thousands and thousands of people healed with her formulas. You know, it's like, so hemoglobin A1C and iron. So you see how sugar causes oxidation, iron causes oxidation. So the body, this is product I sell, Min, from Systemic Formulas, bionutrient Min's got lots of magnesium in it. And it turns out there's freaking 9 milligrams of iron in a serving. So I'm going to discontinue its use because we only need about 1 milligram of iron a day, turns out. That's how well it's recycled in our body. And don't you give blood, James? Don't you give blood, James?
17.
Right, so you give blood, then that lowers your stored iron levels, your body makes fresh blood, and then your ferritin drops, and you have a better chance to live longer, actually.
So what kind of test? I get the instant test when I'm there. Is that to test the ALC?
No, it's hemoglobin. So they're seeing if you're anemic, and they're doing a quick check when you give blood.
It's a different test.
Yeah, a different test. If you want the full Monty blood panel, iron, copper, red blood cell, magnesium stuff, you can order all that through my network, third-party stuff, and it'll cost you about $200 to $300. But if you really need to know, like, you might want to look. Like, there are a few people in this room that might be interesting, but at some point, what I'm working towards is a healthcare system where that's provided for on a yearly basis, right? You get your blood checked all the way down to how your iron's being metabolized, because the main enzyme, you want to look this up, James, ferroxidase. Ferroxidase, Ferroxidase, ferroxidase. That's the enzyme that regulates iron metabolism, and it's a very expensive lab. Why do you think so? Because it reveals a lot of information. Because medicine is a management system. They're managing your suffering. That's why the reference range is so wide on labs. It's like, once you're out of the reference range, you've lost 90% of the organ's function. Oh, how convenient. That's why we work with optimum ranges in my world. Well, you're out of optimum now. Early warning. Make course correction now. Your plane's veering over here. We want it over here. You want flight trajectory going towards goodness, not towards the volcano, which is what you're steering it. That was my spiritual teacher's main point. Is Adishanti used to say, my only point of being up here is you keep telling me you want to go to San Francisco, but you keep walking towards LA. My job is to say, no, you said you wanted to go over there. And so I just point the way again. And that's basically what I've been doing for 35 years. And 40,000 hours later, it's like, nature. And then that's why Health Alchemy is now, you know, a private membership association. We haven't formalized it completely yet, but what's our ministry? Nature and health. Very broad, covers a lot of bases. So that's the religion, if you will, that's the spirituality of what the Celtic people pointed towards, which is the 5 senses or your portals to the divine. Tantra is a portal to the divine. Devotion's a portal to the divine. You know, music is a portal to the divine, right? Cooking could be a portal to the divine, you know. This moment could be a portal to the divine, actually, because it's always and already here. So like cleansing then, so back to the seasonal and cleansing part, then health and energy, obviously better health and energy. This liver thing, I mean, thank you, Cindy, for bringing those raw livers a few months ago, because the root cause protocol guy says it's the only way you're going to get yourself back in order is eating liver. And I saw those livers, and I've been eating, I have a can of livers marinating in teriyaki, and I do about a couple ounces before every meal pretty much. And I mean, I was even drinking coffee every day for like 8 days to see if I would, you know, but that was part of why I got worn down. It was like, woo, coffee with cardamom every day for 8 days, you know. Four to 6 ounces a day. 4 to 6 ounces a day.
That does seem like a lot.
That's
4 ounces? Because 4 ounces would be like
4 ounces is a deck of cards.
I mean, that would be like 2 of
That's
those.
2 ounces. Yeah, 2 ounces.
So twice that every day?
Yeah.
No, that's wait for you for a 200-pound man.
Beef liver too, because his thing was beef liver for the copper zinc thing.
I don't know then. You should go by weight. That seems like a lot.
Yeah, it's going to be person specific, and you can check it with your labs, right? I have a client right now, young lady. It's like she didn't do her labs from a medical procedure done in September, and it's like we need to see your trajectory, right? So each of our trajectories this is one of our. We need to make sure that our iron is being controlled, and that's why I'm doing it. Like, this is medicine, folks, and so the raw liver is the best way. And it's like, what is it? Eat to live, don't live to eat. I was a live to eat kind of guy, and it only got me suffering. So voluntary suffering to not have involuntary suffering. Back to that.
Where do you get the good liver? That's from the farmer's market from Podline.
There's places online too. You can get beef liver online sent to you frozen, or there's ancestral supplements. You can get them sent in little tablets and capsules, you know. But generally, it's better with the water still in it, fresh. There's Miller's Farm, there's Real Food Bay Area, but over here in Santa Cruz, we're not on their delivery routes, so it doesn't work really well. Like Isabel, you probably are on their delivery routes, right? Okay. The market's still the best places, and they're not requiring the mask at the local market, are they? Thank God.
Optional by now.
Optional. Okay, good. Okay, good. So better energy. I'm going to run through this. Awareness. So this last two kind of go together. And so I had allergy season as a child, so bad that from age 5 to age 15, I had 10 shots in each arm every week for 10 years. I figured I was like 18,000 shots, and it didn't really help. So I knew when ironically, it was right on my birthday, it's May 1st, and my allergy season would usually start right around my birthday. And ironically, when I felt the best was also when I felt the worst. So I love May. And so I had a teacher, you know, fast forward 20 years and studying some Chinese medicine, this teacher goes, you need to prepare at least a season in advance for the problem season. Because if you know May is the problem, then rewind 4 or 5 months back to January and start doing some work. So that was like a 10-year cycle of each year getting a little better and a little better by preparing in advance. And that's why understanding the seasonal aspect allows you, if you know you have a problem time, like every fall I have a problem, or every winter I have a problem, then you know when the next cycle comes around, like, okay, I'm going to prepare ahead of time next year and be ready and have a plan. How many of us do that? Like, zero hero? But that's what a health professional like me would give you, is a year plan. Like, okay, here's the seasonal leading, and that's what I have up. Oh boy, it's 9:10. Okay. I'm going to read something out of this because this is why. And so keep in mind in the background, having around, there's a cleanse, which is part of the adaptation of, like, a lot of people getting sick right now. Why? Because it's finally getting cold. And the blood quality changes when it gets cold. It's like the blood quality changes when it gets warm. And these are natural seasonal colds and flus. I ranted on to a client. She was like, oh, the whole family got COVID. And I corrected her. I go, your whole family didn't get COVID. Your whole family got the seasonal cold and flu. Get over this COVID bullshit. You know, it's been going around for eternity. And they've just weaponized it a little bit with some special spike proteins and Fauci, whatever's. And, you know, I don't fucking care. Let's move on, folks, because it's about a drain of consciousness more than anything. Tom, what did I tell you? It acts up when you lower your chi, right? Your syndrome you're in, right? When I deplete myself, my old herpes acts up. I had Epstein-Barr, I had mononucleosis, all that stuff acts up when I take care of myself.
Well, a lot of these things can also, I think we live in a world that just like automatically makes us sick with like harassment architecture, like 5G.
Harassment architecture. Listen to that, guys.
We were riding on bikes today, right? I was about 100 feet away from a 5G tower. I felt burning on the side of my body next to the 5G tower. I'm EMF sensitive, so I know these things can be dangerous. Like I experienced it firsthand, but then I think there's an inner nature, like our soul nature, that is like interacting with the outer world, and that's where psychogenic illness comes into play. Because if something is going on in your life and you have like unresolved traumas, you can kind of worry yourself. Like after bad things happen to me, my adrenal glands were shot. Like I caused that in my body through stress, like literally just worrying. So there's an important aspect, I think, in pneumatology, which is just science of the breath, that is empowering freedom of thinking in the individual and isn't tied to the study of cadaveric medicine, which is a term that Theodore Adorno uses for modern pharmacology of medicine. They study dead bodies. We study living bodies.
That's right. You know, Cindy's a sort of a breath into the breath a lot too. So you guys might talk. Cindy over here because right. That's right. I've been easing my way out of cramps these days. I get a cramp in my foot and just hold my breath. Cramp goes away. Hold it out.
Holding it out faster because it doesn't take as long to build up. You can hold it in too.
A lot of the problems we have with our breath is that our bodies haven't learned to recycle carbon dioxide, right? Properly. We're over breathing.
We're imbalancing.
Become what?
Overly sensitive to carbon dioxide.
Overly sensitive to carbon dioxide.
What you want is like a slow, shallow in and out breath, where the out breath is longer. But then if you're thinking of something, it can be or like overbreathe if you're like too conscious of it. So there's actually this really good like fire breathing or something, and then you empty out the breath.
Right. And that's a way to, that's what the yogis knew. And that's why asana and pranayama, which is breathing, was preparation for yoga, because it slowed the mind down for reality to break through.
Wearing the masks, carbon dioxide.
That's not really the part about masks that's bad for you.
It's a psychological
The
thing.
breathing of carbon dioxide is actually good. In fact, it's been used as training prior to all of this as a way to recoup our carbon dioxide.
Really?
And you were talking about kidneys earlier, because I was just researching this actually right over here. Is that when our carbon dioxide levels are too low, it imbalances our blood pH, and then our body balances that by taking carbonate from the kidneys, and then takes energy from the kidneys. So
Back to that again, right?
In yoga, they talk about like your energy bank account and building your prana by slowing down your breath and retraining yourself to breathe less and slower. That builds up your prana. But from a physiological standpoint, what that would do is kidneys are no longer working to balance your blood pH because your breathing is so off.
Right. Well, there was a book I read from Yogananda's guru's guru, the great avatar Babaji. And in this book, the contention was that we actually have a finite number of breaths in our life. And we can use them any way we want. We can use them quickly and die sooner, or we can slow down our breath and live longer. Now that's fascinating. We have a finite number of breaths in this life. It's a fascinating thought to me. I was like, wow, I better. So I had a friend that he died when he was 27, and And I was in the portal with him when he passed. He literally disappeared when he died. And I looked at the clock when I woke up from the dream, and it was the moment of death, I found out later. So he was asking me, I was channeling, and he was asking me, why am I dying? Why am I dying? Why am I dying? I don't understand. And I said, because you used up your bank account too fast. Now you're done. And then we had a few other things. I don't remember what I said, but there was a point where he got it, and he literally, he was gone, and then the dream ended. And that was sort of I was 28 when this happened, and it was like, wow. And then I read the Babaji thing probably 20 years later. I was like, wow, I wonder if that was, connected there. I don't believe we have a finite number of breaths personally. I have very few beliefs, but I have one belief, and it's that we can increase our bank account, and we are more unlimited than we think. Gene thinks there might be a point in our lifetime where we could actually reverse our aging and go back to choose an age we want to be in the next 5, 10, 20 years, which I think is kind of cool. I want to be 20 again for a while. Yeah. All right, so we got a little more time. You're awake, all right. So I'm going to just mention a little bit what's in this document that I was excited to find about seasonal eating. And keep in mind that cleansing is one of the reasons why, because you clean out the holiday waste, but there was a couple of interesting insights that I'd forgotten about. So nature mirrors our internal environment. So observation of elements in nature gives us a sense of our connection with life. This observation can also get us in tune with what we actually want to eat. This is skillfully reasoned out and intuitively grasped, art and science. So by using thermal opposites of temperature, hot and cold, moisture, wet and dry, growth, decay, light and dark, still or moving, lots of behaviors, or calm, by using thermal opposites to balance our condition, we can remain healthy with less effort. For example, in warm weather, we eat more cooling raw foods and use dispersing cooking techniques. Following the guidelines in this book can help people discover their temperaments, the less changeable aspect, and their conditional natures, or their more changeable aspect. We talk about constitution versus condition in the macrobiotic tradition. It's like you're born with a certain constitution, your astrological natal chart, if you will, and then there's the conditions of your life. Our organ systems at a cellular and macro level have a synergistic relationship with the season of the year. As the climate changes, our bodies and need to adapt to what is occurring in nature, because we're a part of it. If we are out of balance in some way, a disorder can show up in a particular season or weather phenomena. Like, anybody get this achy joints when the storm comes in? People get the achy joints when the storm comes in. Call it damp bi in Chinese. Is that damp bi? Yeah, wind damp. There it is.
People who have a pin in them or something.
Yeah, some people feel it in dry. Some people get it in damp. Some people get it in wind. Well, the wind's the carrier of it, right? So it'll be wind. Yeah. So you could have like 8 arthritis cases, and in Chinese medicine, you give 8 different cures. Because one might be dry, one might be heat, one might be moist, right? And so that's why it's really important to differentially assess someone. What's going on with this person? Are they deficient or excess? Is my first question. Like, because it's back to, I want to cleanse, Craig. Well, I'm not going to do a deep cleanse. Why? Because I don't have a lot of vitality. And I'm going to check it with my blood pressure check. Lay down for 5 minutes, take your blood pressure, stand up, take it immediately. And that tells you all you need to know pretty much. It's like, oh, it just fell 20 points. I shouldn't be doing anything. Because when you're tired, you want to clean up your room. When your cells are tired, they ain't cleaning up the room either. There's ways that, like the pulse takers, that's why taking pulses is really valuable. The Chinese pulses, because you can tell that. It's like, your pulse is normally like this, but now it's like 50% smaller. What the hell are you doing? Not eating usually, right? This way of thinking, as I was saying earlier, is different than our usual way of looking at organs as a strictly physical or isolating an organ function in a particular part of the body. So we have, at a cellular level, we have sort of a liver on the cellular level. We have a sort of a spleen at the cellular level. We have sort of intestines at the cellular level. And it's all a fractal. And but it's not the way we think it is, because nothing's the way we think it is. It's the way it is. And like I said, I don't think that our body is actually looking at chemistry at all. I think we label it chemistry and we've agreed these are the symbols for it, but it's frequencies and energies. And that's the way the universe works. It's a dance. The universe isn't going like, that's not what the universe is doing, right? It's not a series of still photographs pieced together. Right? And so, like each cell has its own process of digestion and making energy. And I just found out that, turns out that there's like heart cells have like 10,000 mitochondria per cell. Yeah, I'm the root cause protocol guy. Like our neurons have maybe 200,000 mitochondria per cell. Like we don't have one mitochondria per cell. Bullshit. Brainwash. Yeah.
You can actually generate new mitochondria, or actually their mitochondria within your mitochondria by doing the fire carbon balance out breath thing. And it also generates new blood cells.
See, this is the things that, these are the subtle sciences that the hard sciences pushed aside through propaganda the last couple hundred years. So we really have to, what's really happening right now is it might take a little while, but these hard sciences will be pushed aside to their proper place. Allopathy is really alternative medicine. I'm talking to my guy in Africa about that. Because guess what? None of the African nations bought the vaccine thing. None of them. I know because he's back there telling me that. It's like they're all,
The last 170 years they've been gay.
that's right. That's what he told me. That's exactly what he told me.
Years.
That's exactly what he told me. He's in Gambia, the Gambia. He's like, dude, none of these people are buying any of this bullshit. So that's good news, right? Very, very good news. Yeah. So there's a chart that I have associated with the seasons. And so a really simple way to understand winter is like, what does water do in nature? It puts out fires, right? It flows down to the lowest place, right? It never avoids, it moves around. The Taoists have some great metaphors for water. It always goes to the lowest point and it puts out fire. So it is the controlling element for the fire in us. So a lot of people that have excessive fire, it's not because they have excessive fire, but the controlling element's deficient. And in Chinese medicine, we say you have yin deficiency. And if you have a normal amount of water, and now it drops to that, see, the fire appears to be excessive, but it's this yin deficient fire, we call it. It's a different kind of fire than if your water levels are normal, and then your fire levels rise. That's yang excess, and they present differently. And yin deficiency is a very dangerous thing because if you think about it, the simple way to understand yin and yang, in my metaphor, is yin is the log and the fire, and yang is the fire consuming the log. So when your yin runs low, you got no log, which means you got no fire. So eventually yin deficiency leads to lack of motivation and listlessness. So it was one of the reasons why John T and I were talking about this, why back in the olden days, they didn't just give ginseng to anybody. They built up your yin first, right? They didn't just give caffeine or sugar to anybody. They built up your yin first. Sleep and breathing properly. There's not a simple formula for building up yin, except first of all, you have to believe you can do it, right?
Yeah, I had a perspective.
Yeah, go ahead.
So yeah, I've been reading some anthroposophy stuff lately. So in terms of like creation or like consciousness, the water exists to like balance out the solar forces. Because the solar forces, if we evolved without water, we would have like exponentiated up into like the active impulses. So like the water became a shadow of the air that was generated by the warmth and the light, and then that brought color into it, where the water helps create color and balance out that exponentiating solar force. But then, you know, if we have too much water, we can kind of put out that fire,
Yeah.
or if we don't have enough, it won't sustain that exponentially away.
Which is what happens to people. And like my mom's aunt died of cancer, and she had the cachexia, which is the wasting away. And she was basically, she lived until her soul was ready to leave, which was, she was a skeleton at that point. And she had a few people to say goodbye to, and my mom was one of them. And my mom came home from that visit. I mean, she was a mess for 2 days. just seeing, their yin, you see somebody there, because the soul isn't going to leave till it's going to leave. I've seen some cases where, people, they live through, where the relative has to fly across the earth for 13 days to get there. And then they get there and they say goodbye and then they die immediately, It's like, wow. There was a black dude on Facebook, my friend Matt Butttree on Facebook. He's regularly kicked off. He's he's sort of a high level intelligence with the Pentagon. He's a programmer. He just put this black guy on, and this black guy said, I ain't dying when they tell me to die. The doctor said, I'm going to die when I want to die, damn it. My grandpa, that happened to him when he was 89. They told him, oh, you have spots on your liver. And my grandpa said, because his wife had died. His wife of 60 years had died, and he went. And yeah. And my grandpa just stopped eating and drinking, and he died on his terms. He went out on his terms. He went into a coma and died peacefully. See, the medical people want you to die on their terms. They can steal your soul and your money. Mainly money, but I mean, so please, anybody watching this video, anybody with me now, if I'm in a hospital and I'm dying, get me out, break me out, get me in the earth, please.
You must go to the hospital with a document that you give them. If you do not give them that document, one of the things you're going to get is a sting, and you're probably not going to get out of it.
Right.
I'll give you more information about that.
Okay.
Find it in my notes.
Yes,
But
I
you
do.
must have a document with you.
Like a notice?
Or screwed.
Like a notice?
It's not that.
It's a medical directive.
Thank you.
A medical directive.
Did I get that from you? It is a medical.
Excellent.
I do have one, if anyone wants one.
Yeah. Excellent.
What exactly is that?
It's just saying what you agree to and what you don't agree to.
You're telling me.
While you're able to communicate.
Well, because you might not be able to at some
Yeah.
point. Yeah.
Like they're doing with, sensible COVID patients. Shuts down the kidneys. And it's like someone is like on not fully conscious. You're kind of just prescribing.
Yeah.
A medical directive after you've already gone in, or is James directed to have it as you go in?
You need to give it to them.
As long as you're
Otherwise, they're going to
conscious,
do
you
it
give
for
it
you.
to them. If you're
Yeah.
conscious, you
Yeah.
give it to them.
Somebody recently did a presentation on it. I'm like, well, that's really important.
Mhm.
But to never go to the hospital. Like, I don't think I'll ever take blood. I've given over 10 gallons, but I don't think the blood is so tainted now. But I still give it to get rid of the heavy metal.
Yeah, give it to them.
That's the least of their concern.
Anything that you sign, like you have to sign 1,000 documents when you go to the hospital, will any of that override the medical?
It probably depends on how you sign it. Like, we, American Nationals, we have a byline. We sign our name, and our name is copyrighted, so you see with the circle around it, and then all rights reserved without prejudice. So that way you're preserving your rights. Yeah, so if you start using a byline with that, all rights reserved without prejudice, that can be helpful. It's good to keep the medical directive in your car.
Or your
Yeah,
wallet.
for sure.
Wallet.
Do with you at all times. Really, it's the simple of what we were teaching in natural law is if you provide notice ahead of time, then like we did with the planning department guy, James, it was so impressive with that cat because he's
Mr.
never
Rodriguez,
never been back. He's never been back.
congratulations. He's really good at what he does.
I could tell,
He's really good.
but he ran into us. See,
What happened? I can tell you about this off camera.
he'll do that off camera. Basically, he lied for 7 minutes, and Bernie would not give him consent to enter without signing my note. Jacob, yeah. And Mr. Rodriguez tried to get into the house under false pretenses to take down my business. And he said he was here to inspect to inspect. And I knew ahead of time, so I had a notice written up and I was conveniently not here. Bernie and David filmed the whole thing. And yeah, Bernie's like, Craig has a notice for you here. And I given him the terms of how he could enter the house and what he could do. And he wouldn't sign it. Bernie said, if you're not going to sign that, I don't consent to your entry. And he couldn't enter, and he knew it. So he spent 7 minutes precisely on this video trying to trick her to get him to enter. very tricky languages, and Bernie just the planning
Compliant.
code compliance
What prompted the
specialist.
visit?
Pardon?
What prompted the visit?
My illegal business complaint by a neighbor. A neighbor complained about Craig's illegal business.
Which one?
Which one? Yeah. Well, now it doesn't exist anymore. It's a private membership association. So,
But farming, you're not allowed to grow things on your land, right? That's illegal. You can't grow your own food.
well, they have a little thing now for everything. They even have a psychiatric evaluation that you're too obsessive about being healthy. I took the test on Facebook like 5 years ago, and I came out full psychopath. They could get you locked in with a psychiatrist now and get you in your health thing and say, oh, you're obsessive compulsive health, da 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 da, and then they'll lock you up and feed you crap to get you back down to their level. Terrifying. It was on Facebook. I was right, you guys didn't see it. Like 4 or 5 years ago, there was this test a friend of mine posted, and I took it, and I thought it was fun, and then it was like, it was real. Oh my God, this freaking thing's real.
It's never wise to take this.
Until about a year and a half ago, two quote experts to get you indefinitely detained. Now it just takes one.
Only one.
Yes.
Well, David ran into that, didn't he?
I'm not sure if David.
No, they want to do a psych evaluation for Mr. Rodriguez, for David. That's what from him, I heard this 5 times, that was always the threat in the background. David, if you don't act the way we want you to act, we're going to have a psychiatric evaluation for you. That was always in their playbook in the back there. And so they could use that against any one of us, right? So my contention in court would be, so I wonder whose standards is this psych evaluation going to be? Is this third party neutral evaluation? Or is it a person of your choosing or mine? Tell me about the credibility of your evaluator. Who's evaluating your evaluator?
That would be my first.
Right.
How do you have jurisdiction over me?
Who are you to tell me I need an evaluation? You need an evaluation. That's why I would get buried in court, because I would just be screaming at the judge and all this fucking idiocy. I mean, you don't want Craig Rain in court, because it would be violent, you know. It would not be good. I'm Braveheart in there, and I'm going to tear shit down. I'm so pissed because of my treatment as a juror years ago. I can tell you about that sometime, Carol.
That's what they want.
That's what they want. They want the Bravehearts getting sucked down. Oh my God, this is on film. Jesus Christ.
I'll close on
You
something.
mentioned streaming.
I'll close on something.
A million people are watching.
No, no,
Not yet. Not yet. Yeah.
What do you got, James?
Well, you alluded to earlier about how much faster and
No, it's not good.
powerful frequencies light are than chemical reactions.
Right.
But don't say anything. Magnetical reactions are much faster
Then
reactions.
light.
Much faster. And one of the biggest lies we have going is about electrical energy. When magnetic energy is very plentiful, but it's just hidden. And I recently saw a film last Sunday night that I would recommend that goes into that. So there's a lot of bullshit going on. There was a textbook, I think it was written in 1956 called Magnetobiology. And all the crap going on right now is being used, magnets are being used, and magnets need iron to be useful.
So there's
That's
back to
all
the
I
iron.
wanted to say.
There's back to the iron.
Yes.
So I appreciate that, James, because iron, was associated with Saturn, wasn't it, in astrology? Planet Saturn and alchemy, huh? Lead, thank you. What was iron? Mars, thank you. Mars was iron. Thank you.
Yeah, they won't have you study magnets.
You can't?
No,
Oh, interesting.
that's something that I want to look at.
There's actually a better form of geoengineering using magnets.
No, they don't want you to learn.
They won't let you get
They do that in
PhD or a
Chinese
higher
deserts.
level.
They have these like magnet poles that draw the ions in the atmosphere over the land, so then they accumulate the water particles. So I think when they're doing the jet spray stuff, they also have patents to draw those things.
Well, I think everybody's sick right now. It rained for a few days, and then the grid was up for the last 4 or 5 days. Now everybody's sick.
I mean, spraying, there's a lot of symptoms involved with that.
Yeah.
So it's like we have safer ways to bring a lot easier.
Thousands of safer ways.
Yeah, thousands and thousands.
Right in.
So we're still being recorded. I'm just going to bring this back to, if you want to do the cleanse, anybody in the group, and there's time to meet with me outside of this group. And then the website, I swear, is it will be up soon. And I think it's important to look at what we're teaching here, which is process. And so you can watch the videos. You know, if you don't have any money, you can watch the videos, and all kinds of, the YouTube thing isn't going to go away. And then then there'll be a private membership thing. And that's what this man in Africa believes, that the templates we've established here will be great for the Western world. And then they teach more in the Eastern world. He was telling me in Africa, all the wise teachers aren't published because it's oral tradition. They don't teach through the written. And that's what I was taught through my early studies. Was I put away my notebook at some point and just whatever I can retain, and then go take notes on a couple of days later. That's what I've retained, right? And if I do take notes, like I admire James, because I would do that, and I would go through my notebook and study it 4 or 5 times over the next 4 or 5 weeks, and then it would root it into me, or highlight certain areas and go back to the highlighted ones. And that's usually how I took notes. Because man, how many of you had teachers that were just reading off the frickin' notes? I can go do this at home.
Yeah.
I want the stories, man. You know, like the edutainment. Like, where's that shit? How's the Bauman teachers? Curious.
I actually like the two. I've had 2 different
Okay.
ones because I took the break. I actually like both of them. One of them is
Good.
just really soft, personable, and the other one is very cerebral. But they're both very good people.
Well, that's
I
good to
like-
hear.
I like the way that they work. The second one is really gets into like what we do in class with you is like she talks about cases and she likes to break it down with us and ask us questions.
Oh,
And so
thank
I like
God.
that. But they're not all that.
So we're getting better, right?
Yeah.
Because the old Bauman was like, oh my God, 20 years ago when I started working with him, it was like, oh my God, it's horrible. And Ed and I didn't get
He's a
along.
talk.
Ed and I didn't
He
get
likes
along.
to wax and hear himself.
Oh yes, he loves to hear himself talk. He didn't like hearing me talking over him. So I was summarily laid off the next week. You know, people don't appreciate when some other teacher tells them to think for themselves, because that's always been my motto. That was Adyashanti when he's up there teaching. He says, I don't want you to believe what I'm saying. Go and explore it for yourself. Make it your own. You know, and that's what a good teacher's here. He's here to elevate you, not enroll you in their teaching or belief, right? So there's a word you're going to leave with tonight, and that's the word enthusiasm. And that's what I strive to be, because there's a Taoist saying, the worst luck is to have discontentment. The best luck is to have enthusiasm, I would say. So the query is, how do you have more enthusiasm in your life? And goodbye.